by the way, I am pro-worker in this country. I am absolutely pro-worker. I'm also pro-business. I'm pro-small business. I'm pro-big business. I'm pro-America. And you know what? I'm even pro-union. But I'm not too excited about a president who takes Labor Day, which is a day for all of us who work in this country, and a president goes around talking, nonsense about unions, talks about the Republicans, and then talks about a $50 billion stimulus bill. He's going to cross the whole country with railways, new rail construction. He's going to circle the globe, I think he said 6 times, with new highways. It's all exciting. There's just one problem. He calls it stimulating business in this country. We don't even know the businesses that build roads or build rails are American. Think about this. Have you even heard this president or any member of his administration say, well, that $50 billion, that's his first installment, by the way, because he normally wouldn't talk about something that small. Anything under about $1 trillion, he's not really, he's not too laser-like focused on. So there we are. It's a beautiful thing to watch this president have, as we see the highest favorability rating for Republicans in a midterm election in history. Suddenly he has a political deathbed conversion, and the man has discovered free enterprise. But even saying that he would support free enterprise, he comes up with a program that's all about government. And you know what I love about President Obama? Of the many things that I love about this president, I love the fact that his first installment on it is to create a bank, a government-run bank. He calls it a public-private partnership. Now, one thing I have figured out here with this president is when he says partnership, that means he's the senior partner. When he says a public-private partnership, that means the private people provide the money and the public people, that is the government people, spend it. That's his idea. This is his brilliant idea of modern politics and economics in America. And you ask, why would the market be having such a tough time? Why would investors be struggling? Why is every working man and woman in the country on the edge of their seats as to whether or not they'll have a job at the end of the month? And he's out talking about the Republicans. And today he talked about being just talked about like he was a dog. A dog. Oh, Mr. President. Folks, I hope you'll forgive me if I take just a moment here to send out some encouraging words to the president and try to kind of, just rub his back a little bit there and say, that's all right. That's all right, partner. It's tough when people sling words at you and they're not nice to you. And it's not like it was there in Denver with all those pillars and that Greek set where you were just adored. Adored. Wasn't that fun? And this is perhaps not as much fun because people actually care about having a job. They care about winning a war. They care about running a government efficiently, effectively. They care, Mr. President. And you made them think that you did too, and that somehow you would be different. Well, Mr. President, you are different. You are different in that you pretended to be something you weren't. And right now, you're not nearly enough of what you are. And we need a lot of leadership right now, Mr. President. And we have a president who's complaining about the way people talk about him. Like a dog. Didn't you say yourself you were a mutt? I'm a mutt. I'm a mongrel. I'm proud of it, okay? And, yeah, I do get treated like a dog sometimes. But you know what? You and I could sit here and commiserate with each other about how sometimes people just don't like you and me. That sometimes people are unkind to you and me, Mr. President. And it isn't fair, Mr. President. But I don't. Somehow we've got to muster the courage as men to stand up and, I guess, quit whining would be the first thing I'd suggest. Maybe quit crying, too. I'm thinking about it. There, I feel better. Good cry makes a man feel good, doesn't it, Mr. President? And when we get people saying nasty things about us, I know it hurts. Of course it hurts. People sometimes don't realize the most powerful men, the strongest men, like you and me, are really sensitive creatures. We have feelings, and we're not honored by others' consideration for those sensitivities. Why, sometimes you and I are offended, aren't we, Mr. President? And people just somehow don't understand the sensibilities of really great Americans. Well, I'll say it, Mr. President, like you and me. I mean, oh, don't worry about those people who haven't had a job for 3 years. Don't worry about that, please. Those Americans will get by. But when people say naughty things about you, Mr. President, I really do. I'm offended. Because, you know, those folks who are sitting in a hospital or can't get a job or been out of work for 3 years, you know, they've just got to suck it up, Mr. President. They don't understand the burdens that a sensitive man like you carries, the hardship, the adversity that you face, Mr. President. I do. I understand it. I just think maybe it'll help a little, just a little, Mr. President, if you would think about, say, those folks who are not working in this country, who can't find a job. Some of them haven't found a job for 3 years or so. And maybe you'd think about the fact that the country needs to create jobs, and we have a free enterprise system that's desperately in need of government getting out of the way. We have small business that definitely needs certainty in its leadership. That's you, Mr. President. That's Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, at least until November 2nd. Then I think there's going to be a little change, and you'll get some new people to work with. And I think that ought to cheer you up, because I know you're feeling sorry for yourself, Mr. President. I know you're walking around saying, poor me. Well, poor you. I understand that. Golly. You know, it's tough being the most powerful man in the free world, the leader of the free world. Golly, I understand that. But remember, there's some people who have, well, you know, one can't compare the pain and the burden and the adversity that they face with what you face, because yours is so much more severe. But I think it'd be really nice and perhaps helpful to your own disposition and perspective if you would start worrying about somebody besides yourself. Maybe you'd quit playing politics and start running a government. Maybe start thinking about those 30, 35 million Americans who can't find a job because of the idiotic policies and silly initiatives that your administration and this democratically led Congress have brought to us. Maybe some fiscal responsibility. Maybe some grown-up leadership. Maybe the assertion that this country needs to stand on its own 2 feet and that its citizens needs first to be responsible for themselves, and that every man, woman, and child in this country is entitled to the constitutional freedoms of liberty and equality of rights and opportunity, economic and educational. And maybe just once, you, Mr. President, could stand up and be an example for every American who is facing hardship right now. And, Mr. President, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to implore you to remember the first thing I asked you to do. First, I said your poll ratings would go up if you would just go somewhere, get away from the cameras, and shut up. Respectfully. Here's the second piece of advice, Mr. President, since you chose to ignore the first. I think it would be a good idea, Mr. President, to quit whining and start leading. Leading all of us as American citizens. Just a friendly thought, Mr. President. Thought I'd pass it on.